So right before World War One, the working classes had had enough, and they were ready to overthrow the ruling classes. If you go to like the historical archives in your local municipal township, you can find the archives of how bad it was. They usually hide it. They don't really put it in the McGraw-Hill textbooks at school or the Becca book textbooks at school. They don't really do that. They don't tell that history, you know. But the working class was ready to overthrow the ruling class right before World War One. It was a pretty big deal, and so the ruling class at that time came up with this sort of final act. Like you can think of it like a fighter jet. If they're going to get shot down, they hit that eject button. It's kind of like a panic button that they can hit when none of their PR works anymore, and basically all of their propaganda falls on deaf ears. And the mass consciousness has just reached a level that is untenable for them. They'll hit this panic button. And that panic button, what it is basically they create two different sides and try to incite a civil war, and then crash the economy, and then they start a world war conflict. And that's what they did in World War One. That's what they did. It's like their panic button. It's their MO. It's their final move that they can make when it's clear that the working class is going to unite and change the economic model away from capitalism. That's what they do. Anyway, after World War One, everybody obviously got their minds right, because after a world war conflict, nobody wants to overthrow the status quo anymore. They just are begging for it back, right? Everyone's just begging for some kind of normalcy back in their lives. So life goes on. Middle class gets reforged. In the 1920s, it did really well. That's why they call it the Roaring Twenties. And then it happened again. There's so many archive stories of right before World War II, the working class being ready to overthrow the ruling class again. I mean, just so many. The Big Bill Haywood incident, the Colorado labor wars, all the stories from the Secret Miners Society. There's just so many. But basically, the mass consciousness was just too large. The propaganda wasn't working anymore. So the ruling class, they're flying around in their fighter jet. They had to hit that eject button. They did it again. They crashed the economy, Great Depression, started the World War conflict, and they financed both sides. They financed the Nazis, the fascists, and the anti-fascists. That's what they did. And it worked. It worked. By the time Return to Peace came, everybody just wanted normalcy back, and the established order returned. And then they reestablished the middle class again. And yeah, it's just wild. It's wild that we were born into this time where we're going to experience this. You know, the working class has finally had enough recently. Healthcare CEOs get murked in the streets. You know what I mean? Like, it's really starting to go down. And here we are. Here we are. Now they're going to hit that panic button. They're going to crash the economy on purpose. They're going to start that World War conflict. But the most important thing to keep in mind is that it's all a rich man's trick. They're financing both sides. That includes the parties, like red versus blue. Like, that's the two regimes that are, they want the working class to fight the working class, to fight ourselves, instead of uniting against them. It's a simple divide and conquer strategy, and the framework, the groundwork, the framework of the groundwork was already established, red versus blue. That's what the two parties are. The differences between the two parties are real. It's just that they keep it to, most other countries have more than two parties. The reason why we've always had two parties is because they anticipate that at some point the working class isn't going to take it anymore, and they have to hit that panic button. It's the only one they've ever thought up. So they have to hit that eject button again, basically. And it only works if there's two parties to fight each other. And so I guess that's what I'm saying, is that it's all just a rich man's trick. It's like, you should go on YouTube, actually. There's a YouTube documentary called It's All a Rich Man's Trick. And it reveals, a very well-researched documentary, and it reveals how the ruling class, the elites, during the 1930s and all throughout World War II actually financed both sides. So UK and US financed both sides. And if you're wondering where you are right now, you are in month 3 of World War III. So you've survived 3 months of it. And I understand that the fascism is really scary and it's very real and it's horrifying. It's like the most evil thing that could exist, and it's here, and it's just terrible. I get that, but part of being an adult and solving problems like an adult is acknowledging the nature of the problem, acknowledging the existence of the actual problem like an adult. And that is the ruling class owns both parties for the express purpose of pushing this button. When shit finally hits the fan on a class level, they can hit this button and trigger the World War conflict. And yeah, that's why there's so many elites disappearing and helicopters and planes going down, and all these rich people are burning alive in their mansions and they never find a body. It's like they're all just going into hiding. They're faking their deaths and going into hiding because they know that the panic button's about to be pushed. We're all about to be thrown into chaos, economic turmoil, and world war. This is going to suck. But if anyone's wondering why the world's melting down, at least it helps a little bit to understand why. And if we want to solve the problem, like if we don't want to keep repeating the same cycles like this, we have to acknowledge that both parties, while the differences are real, they are owned by the same people for the sole, exclusive, and express purpose of pressing this panic button. So how do we solve that? I'm not saying I have all the answers. I don't know. But that is what's going on. It's a rich man's trick. And as much as we hate Trumpers or fascists or whatever, there's ruling elites that are behind both sides. Like, you're not going to vote blue and get out of this. That's not a thing. So we can come to terms with that and try to develop some sort of strategy, or we ignore it. Or we vote blue, I guess, and just ignore it, and the cycle never ends. There'll be a World War IV and a World War V. No generation's been able to break this wheel. So, I don't know. Every once in a while, a generation's born that could do it. Is it us? I have no idea. Again, I don't have all the answers. I just know what's going on. So, tell as many people as you can, I guess. And try to stay hopeful. Try to stay hopeful. Staying hopeful is an act of resistance, and I know it's really, really hard to do that. I understand it's really hard. And I'm sorry to everybody who's going through what they're going through. I'm going through horrible things myself, so try to stay hopeful. And let's try to figure out how to not repeat the same mistakes. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying to organize so that we can grapple back what public safety we can grapple back. Okay? Love you.